Welcome, everybody. Today panel, we're having a very interesting guest with us. My name is Ziv Cannon. I'm the CEO of Symmetra. Symmetra is a digital securities exchange out of Israel. And I elect first the panel members to introduce themselves. We'll start with Anna, please.
Hi, thanks for having me. Happy to be with you all at the Finance Magnets event. My name is Anna Stone, and I am here with gooddollar.org. Gooddollar.org is a social impact mission out of the capital markets platform eToro.com. We are focused on giving every human being a basic digital income. So taking the idea of universal basic income and adapting this for the future digital economy that we believe has already arrived. This is the brainchild of eToro founder Yoni Asia, who first had the idea about a decade ago. And as a team, we've been working on Good Dollar and delivering the Good Dollar, which is an actual digital income, for around 2 years. We launched 2 months ago, and we've been really, truly overwhelmed with the pickup. We've seen over 50,000 people from all over the world who have signed up and begun to claim a digital income in Good Dollar and actually use it as a global payment mechanism, if you will, in exchanging digital goods and services. So we have opened a digital marketplace where we see people actually using Good Dollars as a digital, to facilitate digital transactions across the world. Cuban taxi drivers that are selling graphic design services to web developers in Burkina Faso, people who are using their Good Dollars to do social good, plant trees, sell vegetables, pick up trash, and basically incentivize new community initiatives. And I'm really excited to talk to you all today about how new innovations like ours will continually push us closer towards meeting our impact goals. Thanks.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you. Catherine.
Hello, nice to be with you all today. My name's Catherine. I work at Nest Challenges, and here at Nest Challenges, we just wrapped up the Open Up 2020 challenge, which is a £1.5 million challenge prize in partnership with the Open Banking Implementation Entity as part of the UK's world leading agenda on open banking. The challenge was designed to boost awareness and adoption of open banking here in the UK, and we just wrapped it up, and we've got some amazing, really positive results, which we're really excited to see. Really interestingly, we've seen kind of 80% of the fintechs that applied for the challenge said that they were supporting financial inclusion in one way or another. And our 4 amazing winners, Mojo Mortgages, Portify, Plum and WageStream, are really using open banking in a way to kind of personalize financial solutions for people in the UK and actually enable them to have better access to money, better management of their money, which is just really exciting to see, especially kind of given COVID.
Wonderful. Noga.
Hi, I'm Noga. I'm very happy to be here with you. I'm in the world of responsible investment. I'm in this journey for the last 15 years. I have 2 roles. One, I'm the CEO of GreenEye, which is a consultancy and a research company that provides data on Israeli and foreign companies. The data is mainly about ESG, environmental, social, and governance data. And we also partnered with Visual Iris, which is an international company, a research company that was just bought by Moody's, the credit company, that decided that they want to go into the ESG world and found the best company to get involved with. I have another role. I'm the founder and managing partner of Value Squared Fund. It's the first responsible investment fund in Israel that invests in global companies, and we invest in 3 categories. The companies we invest in, They need to be ESG leaders. They need to have some kind of income from SGS, from sustainable goods and services, and they need to be financial good and financial equipped to be invested in. And the whole idea is to show our to show our investors that you can make an impact in the public arena where most of our money is, and also make returns. And that's what we show them in the last couple of years that we are operating. So.
Thank you. Wonderful. Vince.
Thanks, Eve. And big thank you to Finance Magnets for this virtual summit. Thrilled to participate. And extra special shout out to Jenny for organizing. No, it's never easy, particularly in this difficult time as we iterate and figure out the right pathway. So thank you for allowing me to participate. I'm Vince Molinari. I'm the founder and CEO of FinTech TV. FinTech TV was really birthed out of, I guess, a few decades of financial service innovation, technology, and the intersection of those topics that it really began to think about how underserved the communication tool was, the ability or the lack of coverage from mainstream media outlets in covering things that are our two primary shows, the digital asset report that we speak about, blockchain, crypto, digital securities, and the impact, which is focused on ESG integration, climate change, and the sustainable development goals. And I think what we found so rewarding as we built our own OTT platform to be able to broadcast is the education awareness around these topics, the ability to demystify them, to educate. And in the case of the Impact Show is really to talk about some of the most pressing issues that we have facing humanity and some of the companies, people, projects that are solving for those, and how do we bring visibility, awareness, or amplify those stories globally. So we're thrilled to be part of this conversation today. And again, thank you, Ziv, Jenny, for the invite, and looking forward to a great conversation today.
Yeah, we will discuss those issues shortly. Shousheng, happy to have you here. Tell us a bit about FinTech for Good.
Thank you, Ziv. Really, yeah, it's an honor to be with this great panel. And my name is Xiaochun Jiang, the founder of FinTech for Good. And we are a venture builder and also investor in blockchain fintech-based company whose mission not only just to bring commercial application solution to the world, but also just address the social and environmental challenge that we are facing. And in the past few years, we launched a few incubator programs, acceleration program, where we graduated some of the most amazing startups in this space. And of course, that's in helping our startup to grow and bring the right solution to the right problem. We also have several additional channels, and one is we organize a lot of events where we try to fill the knowledge gap. And just recently that we have the CBDC forum that we brought a lot of central bank together to just share and learn on central bank digital currency. And we also have a CBDC capacity development program where now we offer to 6 central bank from developing country to make sure that central bank digital currency as a new instrument which can just bring the right inclusive benefits to not only the developed countries, but also to the developing or least developing countries. And another interesting work that we are working on is on the Sustainable Housing Accelerator, and where we try to just look at the whole value chain of the housing sector and looking at the inefficiency and where things can be changed, and bring blockchain-based solution to address the titling, zoning, and different kind of problems within the housing sector, and bring those solutions to different municipalities in different countries. And lastly, we also have another initiative which is on gender equality, and this is a very interesting work that we have a number of organizations coming together, looking at the fintech industry and see that, how can we just bring gender equality to the fintech industry? And we launched the fintech diversity radar, and which is a fintech diversity index, and where we use the index to really bring to the sector, to the industry, the benchmark tool, and the fintech company understand their gender performance, and then they can improve to make fintech industry as an inclusive industry, and also benefit not only the males but also female, and bring the right solution to the humanity. So very happy to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I think, the first topic that we need to touch, if we're already touching on sustainability and ESG, is the COVID-19 crisis. And this is a question to Noga and Vince, but then also to the panel, if you have anything that you'd like to add. COVID-19 crisis not only brought the greatest recession since World War II, but investors are also calling that it's the first 21st century sustainability crisis, and one that has renewed the focus on climate changes. Will COVID-19 be the long-term catalyst in your mind for ESG sustainability investment? Is this the tipping point where we're going to see more sustainability investment in your mind? Noga, Vince.
Noga, please.
Okay, so I'll start. I think the main challenge of investors in terms of finding investments in crisis are to find companies that are resilient. Those companies that have the resiliency of being strong also in challenges and especially in crises. And I think the COVID-19 showed that those companies that have as ESG, good ESG, and are managing well their environmental issues, their social issues, meaning their relationship with their employees, their relationship with their supply chains, all the idea of health and safety, have the right tool to deal with that, with those challenges. And the same way, we see those companies that have also some kind of form of sustainable goods and services that are here for solutions and not just part of the problems, are also being essential when crises occur.
So it's a hedging strategy basically against systemic risks such as COVID-19, such as other sustainability crises.
Yeah, and I think we saw it, and we saw it in companies like Medtronics that have great ESG in terms of their scores and in terms of their management, but also when the crisis just began, they understood that they need to take a role and to take a leading role in this situation. And then they opened their patent, and they allowed everyone to copy their machines, and they became a solution instead of just being part of the problem. So I think, as you said, I think it's a tool that responsible investors had before the COVID, but could use it straight on. And that may be the reason why we see so much money flowing into the ETFs that are ESG, and the whole world of responsible investment has grown tremendously in this time. And we can see, interestingly, we just saw one new research come by Fidelity that we see there, that we can see that there is a correlation between high scored ESG and performance, both when the market goes down and the market goes up. So this correlation gives a lot of confidence to investors.
Yeah, what do you think,
invest there? Vince?
Well, I could talk about this for 3 days, so I'll try to be brief about it. But I think it is beyond hedging. I think this is a fundamental shift. I think when we look at this intersection of the digital transformation being accelerated by COVID, I think it's holistically touched people's hearts and minds to rethink our positioning. I think it's about transparency, whether we're talking about supply chain, whether we're talking about C-suite executives and having diversification, whether we're talking about board of directors. And I think to Noga's point, what we're seeing is quantitative results that speak to outperformance by good stewardship of organization. So I think we've have a monumental shift that is not going back, that takes us beyond hedging, that looks at how do we holistically invest, right? When we moved from climate change, right, which was once global warming, right, to climate change, right? That resonates differently. I think where we've moved now is from marketing and perhaps even some early days of greenwashing to real systemic risk within investments. And how do we look at it differently today as fiduciaries, which changes our investment practice? How do we look at climate risk within portfolios, and what are the inherent risks that we didn't think about before? How does that change perhaps a rating along something that may be systemically more susceptible to wildfire, right? To increased hurricane. We see what's happening here in the United States. So I do think it's this fundamental change that has been accelerated by COVID that's not going back. I think it speaks to the full suite of how we operate, how we interact, how we think about the oneness of our planet. I think when we look at the interconnectivity, that we begin to realize that deforestation, the things that are occurring in the Amazon, is just not some far off land, that impacts weather patterns, that impacts so much. So it goes to the core stewardship, and I think of how we have to open our hearts, which open our minds, which then is that feedback loop where we think about how do we implement, how do we use this great technology that we have that's well in advance of how we're implementing it for data analysis, product creation, things like say that we do at FinTech TV, and you're doing a great job as one of our hosts in Tel Aviv, Ziv, is to educate, put that education awareness forward so that people can take action. So I'm sorry, a long response to a question that I think is so important, so pressing right now.
So what I like is that, I don't know if the viewers know, but you have a very extensive background when it comes to financial products. You've been managing few ITSs in your past and was involved in the Jobs Act. So it's very interesting to see and to hear those things from you specifically. And if there's any other members of the panel who'd like to comment on this issue.
Yeah, I think what kind of mirroring a lot what we've heard from Noga and Vince there as well, we've actually really seen a shift in our fintechs who are part of the challenge, who've kind of been in the challenge since November last year. So literally kind of had to weather the storm of this pandemic, all offering financial services and a really wide range. So including the kind of mortgages, which obviously kind of in the UK, the housing market completely shut down for about 4 months. I think what we're really starting to see with those founders is actually just a shift in terms of actually how they balance resilience of their own organizations together with growth. Growth is so important when you're at that kind of really early stage. But I think what really the pandemic has brought home is actually the importance of being connected to your community. So whether that community is your consumers, your customers, but also really importantly, your employees, and actually then how you make sure you're building that kind of strong, resilient company, rather than just kind of a very, very fast, quick company that can be kind of sold off really quickly. And I think it's really exciting to see that. I think it kind of, again, brings back that connection to their community and to their, restrictions that climate change brings, and enables those companies to be around for the long term.
Yeah, from my part, I think there are two things. One is that for all the investors, that's probably COVID-19 really bring a need to reevaluate your investment tools. And the number one is that when you're looking at the different portfolios, so you have to just really integrate those new type of risk that you may not include into your decision-making process. The climate screening tools, the vulnerability tools, and also other ESG related risks, which how to just bring those tools to be part of your current methodology when you just selected the portfolio company. I think that is really critical. And another, very important part of the same story is really looking at vulnerabilities of different communities, and where that's now that's we know that COVID-19 impacted different population in a very different way, and some will just during pandemic that suffer more than other communities, but that can also be translated into opportunities. One good example is the digitalization, and if any impact investors or investors who don't have any portfolio company, which are offering digital infrastructure or digitalization related offers, probably, you will miss some great opportunities how to just help different communities who are the most vulnerable to just come out of the crisis, no matter it's this crisis or future crisis. So digital technology definitely is, a very important sector or a vertical that you should looking at. Yeah.
Okay, I think that is a great segue to my next question about universal basic income. And Anna, I know that you're an expert on the subject, so I'm hoping that you can introduce the subject to the panel, and we can have a short discussion of what is universal income, what are the principles of universal basic income, what's the problems, why it has not been implemented so far by countries if it has so many good attributes, and what can digital technology do to accelerate the process of UBI? Thank you.
Sure. So I'll start high level and then go into some of the challenges and opportunities. So universal basic income, often abbreviated as UBI, is the idea of giving every human on earth an unconditional cash income just for being alive. So unconditioned by any sort of behavior, employment status, etc. It's a long-standing idea. It's actually been around since, I believe, the 17th century, but has recently come back into, I would say, into vogue, actually as a result of many projections around automation causing mass unemployment, if you will. And so as a result, it's been, I'd say, adopted as a tenet by some leading futurists such as Elon Musk, and Yoni Assia, who is obviously funding this project, but it's been adopted by many futurists who are looking at the coming AI massive shifts in the labor force that project that basically, I think nearly 1 billion jobs will be eliminated by 2030 because of automation. And it's been seen as a potential response that will provide greater economic stability, if you will, and more opportunity for people to build themselves as we adopt to a knowledge and an information economy. Some of the challenges of basic income, and so actually what we've seen is over the past year, like Vince says, I think the paradigm shift has changed whether or not basic income is even approached as a feasible or worthwhile idea, if you will. So I think the COVID-19 crisis really pulled the curtain off, if you will, the illusion that most people have a sense of financial stability, and really revealed that even for people who are employed, even for people who have homes, even for people who are not what we would qualify as poor or living in poverty, are still living with a great degree of financial uncertainty, if you will. In addition to that, the policy discussion and the policy context has changed as a result of COVID. So if we look specifically within the United States, we've seen that the policy response to the economic crisis has actually been to put money directly in the hands of people. So this has come from the stimulus check of $1,200 for every individual. This has come in the form of enhanced unemployment benefits at both a federal level and a state level. And as a result, the data has actually showed that these initiatives have kept people from falling into poverty and have actually enabled people to crawl out of poverty. So giving money directly to people, putting liquidity directly into the hands of people has proven to actually stimulate the economic activity that we hope to see. There's also been a change in politicians actually adopting basic income as part of their platform. So we see this throughout the UK, but also in countries such as South Africa, Germany, and even in the US, which has, I would say, less of a social state or social economic state as some of those other countries. We see basic income being championed by politicians such as Andrew Yang, and really being adopted by a number of different technology leaders, such as Jack Dorsey, who's the CEO of Square, which is a major payments profile that you guys are all aware of, a platform. When we think of some of the problems, I think the problems come down to how would you actually administer such a program, and how would you pay for such a program, right? So these are both, and these are actually both areas where I believe that financial innovation and financial technology actually provides the answer. So just purely at the sense of access, we know that now we have the capability for every human being alive to actually have a digital wallet. So even though there are 30 million Americans that never received their check because they weren't able to identify the bank account with the tax report, with the IRS filing, with the identity of the individual, with the social security number. This is one challenge of access, which digital innovation actually should be able to solve, especially within the context of advances around digital identity. And the next question of how do you pay for it is also, I believe, going to be a major challenge of how do you pay for basic income on mass scale. And I actually believe that those of us who are thinking about this problem realize that there's a lot more opportunity to solve this than is known. And that's because we know that there's a high degree of capital out there that currently is sitting latent and also is deployed for impact initiatives. And that if we actually set basic income as the goal, I believe there's a tremendous amount of potential for us to answer that question of how do we pay for it, through being creative around how we use current funds that are oriented towards sustainable investing, whether it's through CDFI, community development, financial institutions that are looking for places to put their capital. When we think of retail investors who are looking for opportunities to both do well and do good at one time, and understand the value of a circular economy and the benefit that economic activity has on our communities, on our families, on the people that are around us. I believe that the coronavirus pandemic and the year that we've gone through is going to really accelerate the rate at which we're looking for answers to those questions.
Yeah.
So thanks for giving me an opportunity to chat there. And
yeah, I think that was a wonderful presentation of this very delicate and complicated subject. Is other members of the panel has anything to add?
Sure. And I think, Anna, that was such a great foundation. Thank you. And what Good Dollar is doing to me is really an example, and not to make it sound generic, it's productizing something, right? So I think we have this demand side of latent capital, or capital sitting on the sideline, affinity-based capital, fan-based, people who want to become consumers and become contributors to organizations that they believe in and trust. And I think it's all part of thinking about the great power of technology solutions that we have that are intersecting and many times combating with policy, right? And how that policy change has to enable the acceleration of the technology to rethink, because I think we truly have all the solutions to move our planet from a model of scarcity to one of surplus, if we begin to think and implement a bit differently. And I'll stop, because I get so excited at the prospect when you think about the digitization of what Good Dollar is doing, and how do you then open up that component to say one's identity and the ability to extend beyond that UBI to individuals, because they have that digitized wallet, to monetize their own identity or things that they want to share with organizations that they trust and believe. So I think through these mechanisms, you really change the very foundation of how we think of what money actually is and how we compensate for it as part of our evolutionary trail to perhaps going to this planet of surplus and elevating those and moving humanity from so many of the challenges that we're having.
Yeah, from me, there are 2 points again. That one is that, Good Dollar really addressed a huge market challenge. It shouldn't be, that costly, shouldn't be taking that much time to bring, subsidies or other type of, money to individuals, to citizens. So I think that is a critical component where that Good Dollar can really add great value. The second is, around the central bank digital currency. That's where that's, no matter, the developed country or developing country are all just taking CBDC as a potential, pathway. But for many developing countries, or at least the developed countries, they don't have the capacity to develop their CBDC for a long time. And I think also, when they deliver such kind of project, they need also learn from, the other project which have been there, done that, what lesson learned. And I think, Good Dollar can be a really good reference for those, CBDC projects. How can you just design the process? What are design principles and who should be involved, and how to just make sure the two questions that Anna answered be properly addressed. I think that is definitely very, very important.
By the way, if we're speaking about CBDC, are you, Xiaosheng, in touch with your colleagues in China? We've recently seen a great pilot that's been launched with CBDC in China. Can you tell us a bit about this pilot from your knowledge?
Sure, and we just hosted the CBDC forum that, we have the Chinese representative who just shared the early pilot, and where that's, in Shenzhen, that's where that you have basically citizens who just be chosen from a lottery process to be involved in the pilot. Then you have the merchant who also are involved in the process, where that's, the citizens who received the DCEP and then can spend their, digital RMB, with their merchant. And from this pilot, it's really very interesting. A lot of, learning coming out of that. And one is that, just the last week or the week before, PBOC just, issued a new consultation of a new law, where that's giving, digital RMB a legal status, where that's, I think that is critical. Second, lessons which are learned is like, even the pilot is so short, where that there are already fake digital RMB just came to the market as of the, PBOC, how to avoid those kind of, the fraud and potential, market distraction. And the third component is within the merchant and also the citizens relationship. In that, there are a lot of issue around the adoption and the incentive for people to just take advantage of that. This is a new thing. There's education component. There's also the incentive design, and for people to adopt that also take a lot of market education and also campaign related initiatives. So many of such learning will be incorporated in the larger rollout in the near future. Yeah.
I want to touch another futuristic aspect of the digital technology, and would really be interested to hear the panel view about decentralization and its role in achieving the Sustainable Development Goal, the UN Sustainable Development Goal. Do you think that the concept of decentralization is it something that could accelerate us as a humanity to work together and to achieve those SDGs, the humanity's goals that being set by the UN, which includes end of poverty, end of hunger, gender equality, and so on?
I think that is essential in order to work on and to get to reach those SDGs, because I think in many ways, one of the things that we learned from COVID-19 is that we need to provide services in the local area, and we need to help people be able to use as much of their power and as much of their resource in order to provide their needs in terms of challenges and in terms of crisis and in terms of day-to-day. And I think sustainability is exactly that. If we look at, for example, solar energy, why is solar energy so good? It's because of each and every one of us could have their own solar panel and get their energy, and we're not dependent on the big giant companies. And I think that's exactly what it does. So I think it's very
distributed solar energy. Totally agree with your point. It's very clever point.
I think it's an interesting one in terms of decentralization, and actually one of the kind of key things about decentralization is that you don't need to trust anyone anymore, right? Because you trust the system rather than trusting any one individual. I think where there aren't bodies of trust, I think decentralization can be incredibly empowering and powerful. Looking at kind of supply chains, that energy distribution, where there isn't, and even kind of banks, looking at kind of, but where there are those institutions of trust, I think that they can accelerate things much quickly in the shorter term. And I think looking at kind of said in comparison, in the UK, we have an incredibly strong national grid of electricity, which then due to the size and scale of it, and they're actually looking at really fantastic ways to manage that through, for example, a new fleet of buses that could be used as storage for national grid energy at night during non-peak, means that like you can use a more systems approach to actually look at how you can completely eradicate the need for fossil fuels within that kind of energy supply, where you do have those centralized bodies of trust. So I think, you really need to look at kind of where is the potential for this, and actually how can you take advantage of where you need that trust and people don't have that they can turn to where there are issues with governance, and actually then when you can leverage the trusted bodies where they do exist.
To answer that question, sorry. To answer that question, I think it's a really centralized system, and the decentralized both have its merit and the constraint. It's really to define where we are, what are the problems we are facing in the system, and then to see which system can just solve which kind of problem. Good example is that decentralized workforce, and with when you just talk about IBM, Microsoft, those huge organizations, even then they cannot compete with the crowdsourcing type of decentralized workforce, where that you can just pull into like a million people who are out of the boundary of your organization to just enable the brilliant idea to be implemented. And the same thing to Bitcoin-based system, which can just create that trust, which a centralized system cannot. But it doesn't mean that centralized system doesn't have its merit, and we will see that decentralized system and centralized system will coexist for very long time. Yeah.
Yeah, and perhaps to Xiaoshen's point, I think when we look at the Sustainable Development Goals, look at that roadmap of the 17 goals that were designed and agreed upon by 183 nations, there is a magnificent global roadmap. And I think when you look at, pick an SDG, that gender equality, financial inclusion, if you could amplify, use social media, look at decentralization as a conduit to aggregate capital, whether that's the inherent need to achieve the goals of 2030 is not going to happen without private sector engagement. So whether that's philanthropic, whether that's for profit, to use that roadmap and tie that to a decentralized framework to aggregate capital to succeed and realize the results of the SDGs, I think is essential. And that's really going to be the difference in achieving the goals or not.
So wonderful.
I couldn't agree.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to continue that decentralization is obviously a huge and large term that can apply to all of the goals in different ways. But one of the things that unsurprisingly, I think a lot about is decentralizing the money supply, and through that diversifying the money supply. And so if we think of the most resilient systems, whether they're natural ecosystems or portfolios, they are those that have a diversification of assets and ways to survive, if you will. And so one of the interesting things that we've actually seen emerge as a result of this period of crisis is actual communities embracing ways that they can diversify their own money supply through community currencies. We've seen some really cool examples in Tenino, Washington, or in the Berkshires and upstate New York, which are systems that are focused off of keeping capital, keeping money circulating within the community, which for the most part have been programs that have been latent for many, many years, but have actually been reinvigorated in response to the crisis. And I believe that that, is a really telling indicator in terms of the need for having a more resilient financial system that provides communities, individuals, businesses with other types of assets to fall back on in times of crisis to encourage sustainability.
So we're nearing the end of this panel, and I have one last question for you. Going a bit into the future, 5 years, 3 or 5 years from now, I hope that we'll emerge out of this crisis stronger than we were before. How do you think that society would look there? Which technology would thrive? And what is your view about the future of humanity post COVID-19 crisis? I know this is like a very general question, but please feel free to comment.
I'll go first and quickly, which is just that I think there's going to be a lot more demand for impact capital. I think that, like Vince kicked off the panel, our interconnectedness is undeniable. The interconnectedness of our humanity, our water, our systems, our environment, our health, our success, and our wealth are all interconnected. We can no longer hide it. We can no longer avoid it. And I think that will change our investing. By 3 to 5 years looking down the line, I think there'll be a lot more options for how we can readily and transparently invest with impact.
Thanks so much, Anna. I think I'm going to build on that and say that I think what we'll see is, as we've seen over the last few years, is that it's not about kind of more impact capital, but actually more sort of a sense that all capital should have a positive impact. And that as soon as you start doing things where that positive impact isn't there as part of your business, you start to lose that real social support for your organization and actually that reason to exist. I think we'll definitely see that. I think we've definitely seen that with the fintechs that we've been working with. In terms of the first question, which was about products that will succeed, I really think it's that products that utilize consumers' data and put the consumers' data back into their own hands and enable them to create their own value and build their own resilience using that data, I think will hugely thrive. But I'm really positive about the future of humanity. I hope that this incredible, crazy year has although been tough for many, given us all a bit of a chance to kind of reflect on what's important and how we want to move forward as a global community.
I'll go. Building, I get to build on all the great minds going before me, but look, I think we're beginning to get to a point of exponential growth and taking these quantum leaps for the benefit of humanity that are going to be technology enabled, whether that's blockchain, whether it's quantum, whatever comes next. I think if we look at our planet as one, and we started to talk about the impacts of what happens in the Amazon affects XYZ, what happens in our coral reefs and our plastics and our pollutions and overfishery, what happens with our glacial warming, it's coming back to the fundamental nature that we are all one people. And I think a lot of the problems, I'll call them symptoms, and it doesn't mean that they're minimized. When we talk about racism, when we talk about gender equality, lack of financial inclusion, those are all outcomes or symptoms of the fact that we've humanized each other, that we've forgotten that we are connected. So my hope is through education and awareness that we begin to realize the more that we become contributors to our planet versus consumers taking from our planet, the better we will be. I think that translates very quickly into things where people talked about, is impact investing part of capitalism? I think it's totally the other way, that we're going to prove that impact investing is going to change and save capitalism. I think we're going to reinvent what money really means in our evolutionary trail. And I think, again, to Anna's point earlier, as we begin to think how groups are compensating, what if we begin to think about economic rewards that are part of love and empathy and kindness, and how that changes the trajectory of the very essence of what money is. So again, don't want to continue to ramble on, but I am so enthusiastic of the intersection of where we are of this reset globally, where our next generation and managing and our elders and our youth together to really save our existence. And from there, I think we prosper beautifully.
I want to
Amazing,
follow up. I want to follow up with, sorry, I want to follow up with the things that was just said. And I totally agree with what's said. And I think demanding and public demanding more and more trustable companies and more impact will change the way companies and investors operate. Because I think what happened in the COVID is that this trust was being challenged. Our trust in the government, our trust with companies, our trust in everything we have around us. And I think this challenging thing will change the way we demand things from companies, and will be less tolerant to companies that don't give us any values besides their own. And I think that will make the main changes, because companies that will want to operate here will have to give some kind of value, and will have to be impactful. So we are
from I think firstly that agree with everyone who just spoke before me, and interestingly, I think in the next few years really there are a couple of trends. One is from the people side, that's enabled by the new digital technology, and we'll see that individuals, citizens will be empowered in a way which we have never seen, and we as individuals will not be seen only as consumer, but also as the investor, as a decision maker in many international process. That's I think is one critical thing. Follow August's point that later that those demand and those power which just are in individuals' hand will be translated into new international system. So the second part is really the digital technology, and where that's again we are seeing in COVID-19 that many people who are reluctant to change and always see that I will never use online meeting, I will never use online, this or that. And now you have to, and then actually adoption, just making digital technology just jump to a very different level. We'll see this trend will continue. Digitalization is a trend which will just not stop, which will just accelerate in the near future. And the third component is around capital, where that you are going to see that more capital is going to go to the impact space, where are the most demanded by individuals, by citizens who are demanding for change. Then the capital has to respond to that. We have seen that from last WEF and many announcements just was made during WEF, and $1 trillion of new assets are allocated to impact related investment. This we are going to see will be continued in the near future. Just in August, that UN Secretary General Digital Financing for SDG Task Force launched the final report. It's very clear that after 18 months of global consultation, the conclusion was very clear. The emergence of citizen-centric financial system will be the future. Digitalization is going to just change everything. And where that we see, humanity is going to contribute to their own fate. And I truly believe this fate will be a good one.
Wonderful, wonderful. So thank you very much. This has been a tremendously interesting panel, and thank you all personally Catherine, Vince, Anna, Noga, and Shoshan. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in the in the future panels to go.
Thanks for having us. It was a
Thanks
treat.
very much for having us.
Thank
It
you.
was great.
Very much.
Thank you.